Hey, welcome to my video. Today I wanted to go through a little sort of a paint with me, but sort of a sped up video of the process of me making my draw this in your style dragon. Also, I'm really sorry if you can hear creaking in the background. It seems my upstairs neighbor has decided to be rowdy today, so yeah, he might make some noises. Yeah. Anyway, as you can see, I've started with a really sped up version of me trying to pick the colors for this dragon. I totally had a reference in mind of a moth that I found on Pinterest. And even with like a pretty solid design in my head, it took me quite a while to come up with like a final color pattern. I think it's really interesting to see all of the variations that I go through. But yeah, this is my process when I know what I want it to look like. So when I have no idea what it's gonna look like, it's a little bit worse. And here, of course, I'm slowing down. At this point, hopefully you saw it in the little speed paint portion, but I've created a multiply layer. I filled it in with this light brown actually, and now I'm painting white to show where the light is. I also have my reference off to the side. In a separate video, I mentioned that people take cute portraits of their dogs with pretty good lighting, and this is exactly what I mean. This is a picture that I screenshotted from Instagram of someone who really, really loves their dog. And honestly, I really appreciate people who love their dogs and take many pictures of them because they are awesome for references. I start out using this reference and then I actually move to my usual reference that I use for animal-like faces, which is a fossa. Or I guess if you're DreamWorks, you can call it a fusa. Whatever. Anyway, it makes for a really good reference. Anyway, I really wanted to make a note with this video of how slow I actually draw compared to what it looks like in a speed paint. I certainly, when I was growing as an artist, had kind of a not so great idea of how fast people actually draw, because I would just watch speed paints and it's sped up, but you don't really get a feel for how slow people are actually working unless you see it in real time. So I'm leaving the first part of this real time, and actually pretty soon, the next clip, I'll speed it up to like 5 or 6 times the speed, otherwise this video will be 30 minutes long. Yeah, I could say that I'm doing it to keep this video interesting, but really, it's because I know I'm gonna be really busy this week, so yeah. Shorter video, easier voiceover and editing, but hopefully the same amount of helpful information for people, just a little faster, and maybe with less rambling. We'll see if I can do it. That will be really hard for me, as you can probably tell currently already. So anyway, I'll speed up the video and discuss my process and any tips I can think of that really help this drawing out, or tips that I wish I had thought of during this drawing. Alright, here I go into turbo mode. The total track time for this guy was actually 7.5 hours. Obviously I didn't do it all in one day, but this one took me a considerable amount of time. And again, I think partially that's because I'm using my newish style, which is a more painterly style, and partially because I worked really hard on it, and partially because I couldn't decide at the end what I wanted the draw this in your style to look like the label, draw this in your style. I couldn't figure it out, so I spent some time messing around with that. Oh yeah, and probably the whole messing around with color schemes thing. Yeah, that would have made it take a little bit longer. So here you can see I've moved back to using my trusty fossa as a reference for the face. It's just really easy for me to see the forms of the face with that picture. And this is the picture that I've been using as a reference for animal-like bodies. Even though the lighting isn't super strong, I find that I can really see the forms of the muscles using this picture, and that's why I like it. I would say that for the most part, my dragon anatomy is based off of dogs. I know my dragons don't look particularly like dogs, like they're definitely longer bodied, shorter legs, slightly different amounts of muscle on their legs. Obviously, it's a cartoon as well. Yeah, but in general, for body structure, I tend to use dogs. I think especially athletic-looking dogs have a really elegant body structure and musculature that I like to replicate. I also think horses would be a good reference for dragon bodies. I've seen people use cats. The one thing that I've always thought about cats though is they have all this extra skin like on their belly, and it's loose and it's wrinkly and it's pretty cute, but I don't know, I just don't like the way that body type looks on dragons. And there's a little bit of a difference between like the shape and length of certain parts of their legs. It's definitely hard to explain without a comparison picture, but I think it's, in general, I like for the dragons to look athletic. Like if you think about it, flying takes a lot of energy, and most of the dragons that I draw, I assume they can also run quite fast. And dogs are made for running, and cats are kind of made more for ambushing. That's like a really long-winded way of saying I just use dogs because I think it looks better. Or at least it looks like how I want the dragon to look, personally. But like, if you want your dragon to be based off of like a lizard, a freaking fish, a hippopotamus, like, that's awesome. That's cool. I actually should really try to do more of that myself and get more variety in the creatures that I create. I mean, I love dragons, but I would also like to make some like unique fantasy creatures or like alien creatures or something like that. Like, I always think about doing that, trying to make a really unique looking creature, but I kind of just fall back on dragons because they're my favorite thing to draw. I love it. It makes me happy. Maybe one day in the future I'll challenge myself to create like creatures from an alien or fantasy planet, and then I'll make some creatures that aren't dragons but instead are like, I don't know, cute little mammal prey creatures, big herbivores as well. And then obviously the apex predators would be dragons because yes. Anyway, back to the actual intention of this video, which is art tips. So here you see I have a color dodge layer on top of my multiply layer. I pretty much put a soft gold over a lot of the creature. This helps make certain focal points more vibrant, and also it softens the shadows in certain areas. So I've learned relatively recently that not all shadows are created equal. Here's some examples of what I mean. The shadows between the muscles on the shoulder aren't going to be as strong as the shadows like between the leg and the body. You know, the crevices between the muscles aren't that deep, but the space between the leg and the body is a pretty deep space. And also that I know that when I paint white or use the eraser on the multiply layer, my shadows end up being a little bit too contrasted for my liking in a few specific places, like every time. So what I do is I'll take the airbrush and I'll use color dodge on the head, the shoulder / chest area, and the hip / leg. You know, if you think about it, these are the areas where the crevices between the volumes are going to be a little bit more subtle, and my eraser / white paint method is sometimes not subtle enough for that, so I go in and I bring back those shadows, like, you know, push them back a little bit using the color dodge. It also has this effect of adding a tint to the shadows, which I really love. And often if I want to add warmth to an area or subsurface scattering, which is like that red glow that you get on like your ears in the sun, and you can kind of see through that ear. It sounds kind of weird, but look up subsurface scattering. It's real. I usually do that using like a red in the color dodge. Anyway, there it is. There was my full process. A quick video, but hopefully those tips helped you about basing dragons off of dogs or whatever animal you want based off of the feel that you want to get from them, and about using color dodge to knock down your shadows a little bit in certain areas, and of course to add light and vibrance. So let me know if you liked this, and I'll see you around.